Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see you in our meeting for launching a Liberating Structures book with stories from a field in English. And the intention of this meeting today is Birgit and I published together with lots of other authors, some of them are here, a book in German with stories from a field. And the intention of that book was to inspire others to get started with liberating structures, and also to inspire existing practitioners to deepen their practice and get curious and play around and try out new stuff. And it was pretty successful in German, and we thought we're now ready to go even bigger and go global and do an international version. And the intention of the meeting today is to kick this off and let you know how we are going to start this, how we are going to proceed.
Yes, and the goal is that we share all the information that you need to know to make the decision if you want to contribute a story to the book. Because that is also something that we've learned. It is a little bit of work to put a story together and redo it again, and work together with the other authors to really make it a book at the end. So this session is for you to ask any questions that you would like to know, what you need to know to make that decision. So we will share everything that we are planning to do, that we've already came up with. There are some things that we're pretty sure how we're going to do, and there are some things we have no clue how it's going to work. But I'm pretty sure we'll figure that out in the process together. And the structures of the session will be that we will start sharing from our side what we're planning and what the idea is. And then, of course, we will use a liberating structure. We'll use One Two for All to collect questions that you need to know. And then we'll dive into questions and answers. So, but I will set us a timer because Anja and I can talk for hours. So we will share a little bit about what's the idea behind the book and how we're going to do it. And the first thing is, as Anja mentioned, there is a German version of the book already. And the idea is to take the structure of the book and fill it with stories from around the world. What do I mean by structure? We have exactly 10 chapters. And one chapter is, for example, building trust. And for every chapter, there's a couple of pages introduction, what means building trust with liberating structures. And it always connects one of the principles of liberating structures to that topic. So how is one of the principles shown in the upcoming chapter? And then there's the collection of stories. So we will always see the person who wrote the story and a quote from that person and which liberating structures are used in that story. And so this is the way we structured the book. In the beginning of the book, there's an introduction to liberating structures that is written by Keith and Henry. And at the end, there's something that basically helps people to get started, saying something like where you can find resources, how you get started the best way. So it's like starting the book and ending the book. And the idea is to translate the structure, so the title of the chapters and also the chapter introductions, but exchange the stories for your stories from all over the world, stories what you have done with liberating structures, and what happened when you use them. So Anja, what kind of stories are we looking for?
Yeah, we are definitely looking for real experiences and in your own words. We are not looking for dry case studies where you are showcasing how elaborate you can string liberating structures to one another, but we are curious to learn about how you experienced using liberating structures. And especially, we are curious to learn that from the perspective of a participant. So often, or many of us are facilitators using liberating structures as a means to help a group achieve a goal. But we would love to hear stories where you are closer to the content and the context of the things that were achieved using liberating structures. So it would be awesome if you could share that the story out of the perspective of somebody just experiencing and using a liberating structure to achieve something that is dear to your heart, or that seemed to be unsolvable, or that seemed to be difficult first and then turned out to be rather simple using liberating structures. So real experiences in your own words and as diverse as possible. So that is nothing you can achieve by yourself, but that is something we can achieve together as a community, which we try to achieve by something like this call, where we invite all people all around the world from different backgrounds, from different age structures, you name it. Like, we are after diverse stories. And we are after stories and not case studies. So you will be enabled to write in first person, in present tense, with sensory information for the reader, and it will be more like a 2-page sharing of how you experience the liberating structure you are going to showcase. And that is another important thing. We want you to, even though you might have used more liberating structures in a given instance you're sharing a story about, we want you to focus on 1, maximum 2 structures that made the difference and really describe, so that the reader can kind of copy paste the given structure. And Birgit, can you share that picture you shared with me today? We have a reader who reached out to Birgit, and he shared a page in the German book where he marked all the things and had post-its and stuff, and shared, okay, I did exactly as you described in the case study. Copyable, do you say so in English? So replicable for the person who is reading it. So that is something that is a bit off the track of describing or storytelling. We want you to describe how you use the story, the structure, not as it's done in the book, but at least so that that the reader can get a hint how that structure is working. So you walk them through the steps you used, roughly. Birgit, I'm handing over to you.
Here's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
This is what the person shared with me, how he used the book. And you can really see that people are working with it and really applying what they learn in the book to their own field of work. Okay, now process. How is this going to happen? Okay, Anja and I are German, so there's a structure. And we've already done one book, so we've learned quite a few things. And there was one thing that we did that we think helped the authors a lot, and that was kind of a grid where they collected information in a similar way and then made a story out of that. We did a few iterations and built a story guide that is supposed to help you writing the story. And that will be one of our key things when it comes to really creating and collecting the stories. And what you will find in that document is, of course, a bit of information about what's the project and some questions and answers. You can go through it when you got the document. And then there are a few steps that we offer you as a structure to get from a first idea to the actual story. So as a first step, it's always wise to define your selfish need. Why are you doing that? Why do you want to be part of the book? Because when it is going to be a bit harder at the end, then you can come back and remind yourself, oh, this is why I'm doing that. And then starting with collecting some key elements of the story. So what is your story? What is your story supposed to be about? Who's gonna in it? What is the reader supposed to learn? Who is the reader? Who are you? Who would you like to write for? So it's a few things to consider before actually writing the story. We also have integrated a few stops where when you've done that part, it's wise to speak to somebody else and give each other feedback. Our idea is that we are building kind of small groups within the authors who can help each other and give each other feedback on how to make the stories even better. And also we've put like little steps in there to share where you are. And so Anja and I get an overview of what kind of stories do we have. And so we can make sure that we don't have 30 stories from German authors about using 1, 2 for all in a standard boardroom meeting. So that would be a shame, but so that is the idea of sharing the steps in between. Then Anja has recorded a wonderful journaling, an audio file that you can use and go through that will guide you through the experience you want to share. And then step by step, make a story outline and write a story. You will find out what else is in there when you go through the process. And we also did a Miro board where you will find all the information collected. We will share the link with you in a second. So this is our idea on how to structure this. We have the story guide for authors. We will build peer groups so you can give each other feedbacks. We will offer virtual check-ins every few weeks, so you can ask questions, share where you are, ask others how they are coping with a few other things. Anja and I are meeting once a week. So if there's anything in between coming up, you can always write us and ask us if you need anything else. And there's a mailing list. That's also very important. If you would like to be part of that process, it's important you sign up to the mailing list so we can share all information with the group. And just to give you an idea, there's of course a whole purpose to practice on the Miro board, and there's lots of more information and things we're gonna fill the Miro board with later. And of course, I've talked a bit more than 10 minutes, but Anja, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, now we hit everyone with a lot of information. We thought we do a short breather for every one of you and give you a brief moment to think of, now you've heard of that project and how we are going to approach it roughly. All its extensive Baroque structuring. What are you wondering about? What are you wondering about? What is lingering? And then we go to the next group, and the next group will just share what else they have and drag and drop that into the middle.
I think I was with Mikala, but
Mm-hmm.
thus you are welcome to also add. And briefly, we said different things, but all super valuable. First one is we would need to set as a community a deadline for the launch and then plan backwards for key milestones. We should agree if it's a British English or American English that we aim for and adjust the spelling. Recommendation to have an English speaker in each group of 3 or the small groups of authors who will support each other during the writing process. And also we were wondering, like it's a personal question, do I have time for this project now in my life? What is the time commitment I need? And what are the pros and cons for the author?
Okay. We won't answer now. We just started to collect all the wonderings. So
yeah, actually, it's the question: could we write in tandems also? And should we make more than one submission because perhaps we have several experiences and wouldn't decide at the very beginning what to choose?
Do you want to collect stories in formats that are less conventional? Do you want a drawing together story? Do you want to? Well, I guess that gets us out of English a little bit. But
okay.
What's the range of acceptable formats for a story? Can we do an interview? Can we do a little guidance on formats?
I think it was me. It was me. So a question on why did you choose a book and not maybe something like a website or something that could link interactively the readers with the authors, or having something that can always grow and collect more stories on the way. But this was more a provocation because I also know the answer why a book. It's nice to have a physical thing to bring around. So.
And then there was also in that space, how do you work with or benefit from blockers?
That was mine. So I like in your introduction, you answered most of my I wonder why questions, but with the action we took in the beginning, where you ask, have you ever experienced blockers? Yeah, I remembered that and started to wonder what is the good thing about blockers, and is there any experience and how you handled them? On top of the link that was shared previously about the how I trust myself or something like that.
We were just curious if the German book or those stories also going to be included in the new book, the ones that you already have, or are we going to have those? Okay. And then I guess there was a question about how, it wasn't mine, it was one of the other guys in there, but they were asking, how's the process? What does it look like?
How do you decide? You've written.
And who's doing it? Who's making?
Yeah. Okay. Thank
you. That was actually my question, and I totally understand that you're going to decide. But I was wondering, like, when will we know if the example that we're putting in is one thing that we can continue on, or so to prevent not to be going all in or too deep in one example and starting the process of writing and then hearing, oh, there are already 10 others that are doing the same. Or
Anya, may I add something to what Ruben said? I have a question too. Is the story guide something to help people write the story or choose the story too?
Both. But we will answer your question. So if that question is not here yet, please add it as a post-it.
I will.
Otherwise, we don't get
I'll do it.
our share.
Sure.
Yeah, we were wondering how we're gonna pull it off financially. Are we gonna crowdfund, or is there anything you need from us as a support, or did you have initial ideas? And also, well, the rest. Oh yeah, and the final format. Did you have in mind a digital book to self-print, or a book, or something completely different? Yeah. So.
And there was also another idea regarding writing the story together with the participants, to have them both views, the view of the facilitator and then the view of the participant. So see what is the effect you are initiating in the audience.
Which language I can really answer quickly? It's English.
Yeah, for me, the overall timeline matters because I'll be busy at certain times and I want to make sure I can commit to this if I do it.
And I was wondering, how about the other factors which have an impact of the beautiful experience with liberating structures? Like we have one in Zurich and meet once monthly, and the trust and the continuity. So the structure itself on one side, but also the additional aspects. How far may I include them in the story?
So myself, my question was: is it possible to describe multiple strings? Because I had a project with multiple strings online, which was to serve the same purpose.
We have, am I worthy? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, you are.
Very simple answer.
So we have a few here. These aren't all my questions. I wrote a bunch of the stickies, but we've got a few others there. So Keith and Brianna and I were talking, and I think Fish has added stuff. Keith added this question about how do we find the extreme or unlikely settings in which liberating structures surprises, including other geographical regions and so on. So focus on settings, find extremes of events and application, as well as geography and cultures and so on, I guess. And that led us to this question of who else should be here. And Fish is that how can we invite these people? And this should be a chance for anyone who can write in English. They don't need to be native English speakers, and that extremes, right? Where is it all over the world? And finally, I don't think I captured this very well. There was this really beautiful point about how can we include the voice of the person who's affected by liberating structures? I think that was yours, Keith.
Perfect. That's it.
While you're still moving post-its, I'm quickly sharing what is happening next here in this meeting. Officially, the time is over that we've blocked for you. So I will quickly share what is happening after that. On the Miro board, if go to the very top left, there's a little person with a few post-its that is answering what to do now. So what you should do after the session is decide if you would like to contribute a story. We will answer all the questions that you've came up with, and they will be on the recording. And if you still have time, you can also stay here and just listen and talk to us, and you'll get the answers straight away. But if you need to leave, then you can get the recording later on. There is a mailing list that I mentioned earlier that you should enter your information in. That is no obligation to really commit to write a story, but you get all the updates that are happening as next steps from us. On the Miro board, there's also the link to the story guide that will help you collect all the information and write the story. And then you should find a peer group of 3 or 4 people to help you during the process with. That's basically the next steps. Do we have the whole process figured out yet? No. We'll do that along the way. And Anya and I will go over to the section with the questions, and we go through the questions and answer everything that we already do know so far. Okay, Anya, questions.
So this is a bit messy, but what is really resonating with me is that every group had the question of timeline. So let's get that answered first. We have a bit the challenge that we want this book to be diverse. So the simple answer would be, as soon as we have a hold on the feeling that there is incomplete completeness of stories, we would say we are done. We thought we set it up in as a time frame where we say we are open for collecting stories, and we make it transparent to those contributing of who else is working on stories, so that it gets a bit of momentum started. And we thought that a viable time frame for that for that first, okay, hey, we are doing this. We are inviting others to write a story. We are writing stories, and we are sharing stories. We are helping each other writing stories. We thought that that a viable time frame for that would be like 3 months starting from now. We have set up 3 check-in calls coming the next weeks, where we take a look of what we have so far, and either agree on further measures of, okay, we need more stories about applying liberating structures, like liberating yourself, or we need more stories around bringing the new into the world, and we need that from that specific region because we haven't heard of them yet. Or we could use those check-ins to say, wow, we have a lot of stories. How do we decide? Are we making a book like this? Or what are we going to do? Yeah, so I think the first time frame for building momentum, keeping momentum, and see how far we get is from now on until end of January.
There was also the question about how much time is it going to take? How much time investment do you have to make? That's a really tricky question. We can only answer that by the experience we have from the first book. It really depends on how long you need to come up with a story. There were authors who wrote the story within 2-3 hours, and some others took a couple of days, probably not in one go, but over a period of time, maybe anything between a couple of hours and 2 days takes writing the story. And you should be able to commit between 1 to 5 hours per month to somehow contribute to the book. In some months that there will be not much to do, and in some months maybe coming up shortly before we are publishing, you will be asked to submit a few information about yourself, or help with proofreading or anything like that. So that will depend on the part of the process we're in, and we always keep everything open so you can contribute, and we always share what's the absolute necessary and minimum to do, and what would be helpful for us if you could contribute. So that's how we did it with the last book.
There were tandems. Tandems are really helpful. Maybe Ina, if she's still there, I have a small screen, so I don't see everyone right now while it's being shared. Ina, you wrote in tandems, and I think,
I found that was a very effective way to write and to co-create and to really sort of see, to let go, to go through the whole echo cycle of feelings. In this needs to be in, this needs to be said like that. But it's a nice process. I would always do it. I would always co-create it. This time I actually was wondering about the benefit of co-authoring and co-writing in tandem to bring in a diversity of voices, to bring in different stakeholders. So this was the background of my thinking this time.
Mm-hmm. And answering together with the participants, so have different perspectives. For example, of someone introducing liberating structures into a group as someone who's more experienced, and as and getting the voice of someone into the story who just experienced the power of liberating structures, which is how I am interpreting that. That posted over here. So maybe write the story together with the participants and the facilitators' view. Yes, absolutely, that is a lovely idea, and we're curious how to come up with it.
There was also the questions to integrate the client. Suzanne and I wrote a story together where she basically was my client, and we wrote the story together on how we did a workshop for her company and what her experience as being part of the group was, and was my experience as the facilitator was. So getting different perspectives together is absolutely helpful for writing that story. I think I'd love to answer the question of, can we write, is it possible to describe multiple strings to have been used? We have noticed that describing strings, to very complicated strings in that stories, is not really helpful for the reader. The best stories, the most helpful stories, had as little structures as possible. So that's why we're aiming for stories where you concentrate on one or two structures. It can be that you have a full workshop and you describe the workshop and only take one part out and describe it in the way, during that workshop where we worked on XYZ, there was one part we were concentrated on and we used that structure, and that helped us for the whole workshop too. That is possible. So, but describing a complete string in the form that we've chosen to is not really helpful for the reader. That's the reason why we're trying to concentrate on one or two stories to keep it as simple and as, what we said, copyable. I still don't know if that's an English word, but to give the reader the possibility to really read the story and say, all right, I'm gonna do that in my workshop tomorrow. Anja, do you have the next question you want to ask?
I can't find it right now. I think it's down there. There were a couple of questions around the existing book, and will some of the stories or all stories be translated back? We put in one or two translated stories from the German book as an example for you to get a feel for what we are after in terms of length and tonality and depth of the story. these are stories from back 2020. And I would say we might use some of the stories from the old book, but so far we want to have a look what's coming out of this global call to contribute. So Birgit, do you have a more precise answer to that, or was that as?
But it shall not be a German book full of German stories. We love to have German stories in there, but we also want to have stories from all over the world. So that will be juggling a bit for us, I think. Is the story guide a guide about how to write the story, or a guide to choose the kind of story? It's more a guide on how to write it once you've got an idea. There are some tips in there how to find a story, but it's best if you do have an idea what you want to write about, and then start with a story guide and work from there.
And then maybe on structuring your writing, absolutely, you can use a structure to do the writing, or to kick off the writing. We used quite successfully appreciative interviews, where people, which help people to identify the core of their story. Yeah, during COVID, we did workshops, and this helped people to really identify what they're willing to write about. And then for the editing, they often used wise crowds to address like things that are still not really, that needed some attention or editing, and to get help from the rest of the group to deal with those. Yeah.
Are we going to pull it off financially? Crowdsourcing, what do we need to do? That's a really, really good question. We don't know yet. Last time for the German book, we had a publisher that we worked with. So far, we are thinking of self-publishing, but Anja and I are still figuring out the pros and cons. And if we don't want to self-publish, then how to find a publisher. So that's a good question, and we don't have the answer yet. One question that was not asked yet, but was a question last time, maybe we add that. What will I earn as an author? A lot. Fame and glory. Fame and glory is the essence. Ina, right? Well, whoever has published a book before knows how much money you can make with a book and what you cannot. In the first step, it costs money. That's why it's a good question about the crowdsourcing. So the way we are tackling it is that Anja and I will take part of the financial whatever organization. And as an author, you will not have to, maybe can, but don't have to contribute financing it. But you will also not earn anything in terms of money from the book. But you can use it as saying I'm a co-author of, and you can use the book to give it to people to showcase your you have written something about liberating structures. And Ina, as you're still here, why is it so good to be an author of that book?
Actually, I think it's expressing really what's important for me about liberating structures a lot, and also to be, it's the process was great and I love the result. I sometimes, if I go to a bar camp, I take it along and I display it. And it also gives a bit, I mean, we are like an open source community. It gives a lot of credibility, of course, to the own long years of practicing liberating structure. So I guess that's a side effect as well. So I can just recommend it. I think it's lovely. It's a lovely process also within the community.
And if you love hearing stories about people that give you back things like we've shared earlier, the person who has used the book to and really worked with it, if you get the feedback of somebody who's really started using liberating structures because of your story in the book, that's invaluable. That's a very, very cool feeling. So that should be one of your goals if you want to be part of that.
I'm having here on my iPad, I see who else should be here and how can we invite these people. So this is really handing it over to you. And I see Fisher has added a lot of names there. Yeah, so that was, of course, the intention of this meeting today was to get this a bit off our hands and over to you, because you know the folks you're working with best, and you know your experience best, and you can best judge who really experienced what difference liberating structures made for them. And you could reach out and maybe first test the story if it's helpful. Help us to improve it so that the people you're thinking of have a good time contributing. So that would be the answer. Maybe you can invite these people.
Cool. I think there was one here. Why a book and not something more interactive? There are several reasons why to write a book. Somebody said earlier, it's nice to have something in your hands and you can give to someone. If you have an idea on how to share stories in a different way, please do so. We've had ideas on to combine it with a website or with a database, and we are sticking to the book for now because that project is big enough. But if you do have ideas on how to do something different, please go ahead. We're happy to connect, to help, to interact, but that's not part of this project, at least.
Yeah, and maybe to add on to that, the book helped us to pull together content one can elaborate on further. So, for example, one spin-off activity for the German-speaking community was a podcast, Einfach zusammenarbeiten, simply work together, where we had a lot of editions with authors who had an interview or were being interviewed by other co-authors about their story and a bit about the wider context of their practice. And it's a lovely example how this can be continued and go on. And that was something Birgit and I am so glad we didn't have to organize. That was a spin-off of this initiative.
There's one more question. Should we make more than one submission? Can you add more than one story? Yes, you can. There are a few authors in the German book who've submitted more than one story. We will still need to figure out during what time in the process we're getting an overview and see, are there too many stories of one kind, and do we need other stories that are missing? The experience from the German book is that we lost maybe a couple of authors along the way because of other reasons, but not because of the story. But if the story doesn't match the criteria, we've managed to work on that together, to change the story in a way that it will be part of the book. The only thing that we have to still figure out, if there are if there's basically 10 stories that are exactly the same, and then from the same country, then we have to find a way to choose which stories we need. But in the German book, we managed to integrate everyone who wanted to really commit a story.
Yeah. And maybe this is also about, I just having a look at, may I recognize the bigger picture of influencing factors, which let me make a beautiful experience with liberating structures? Yeah, absolutely, because that's the context you're experiencing liberating structures in, and that were influencing the power of your experience, or how you experienced liberating structures in the context. So if you think that your story is becoming more interesting or more relevant if you focus on certain settings and find extremes, or about a bigger picture or context you are part of, and where you think, so maybe others are in the same context. I mean, the world needs more positive stories of how you achieved something that seemed difficult, and that might influence a bigger context. So absolutely, it would be beautiful and wonderful if it's connected to a bigger context. But it's not. We're not embarking on, or we don't want to put that burden on us to say, okay, we're making a book for achieving world peace or something like that.
Anything you still want to add, that you're still here, that you want to add or ask or comment on?
Well, you mentioned the thing about finding peer groups, and I think I didn't really. I thought I could recall it, but I can't.
Yeah.
By when should we find the peer group?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
But on the My report, there are the dates for the authors' check-ins.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. If you haven't connected to anyone in the room, some people just know each other and probably teamed up in the background. But if you haven't found a group, then the check-ins are a good place to see who will be contributing and who can you team up with. And the next one is November 20th. Thank you all for being here, and for everyone who's just watching the recording. We're looking forward to everything you're coming up with and submitting as a story.